president, and really to say that I'm very delighted to welcome all of you here, particularly our special guests, our honorees and their family, friends, and fans. Also, Congressman Baldacci is here with us today, President Hutchinson. Delighted to have you on our campus. I'd just like to briefly say a few words about UMA and why we're so happy to have the Hall of Fame here on campus. Let me also mention that I was very proud to be the 1995 inductee in the Hall of Fame, so it gives me very special pleasure really to welcome the new inductees today. But it's important, I think, for us to recognize that UMA is an access point to higher education for over 6,000 individuals in the state. 72% of them are women. The Maine Centers for Women Work in Communities, which is on this campus and others throughout the state, plays an important role as well in bringing women into the higher education in Maine. We know that recent studies have certainly shown that women's lives improve greatly through having access to increased education and learning. And so, on behalf of both University of Maine Augusta and the Maine Centers for Women Work in Community, I would like to welcome you all here today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much, Joyce Fitzpatrick for BPW Maine and Eloise Vitelli for UMA for extending greetings as co-sponsors of this event. We're very pleased to have so many of you here today. It seems like March, which is Women's History Month, tends to give us a snowstorm whenever we try to do lists, no matter which weekend of the month we plan. Again this year, we're going to recognize the women who were nominated but not selected for induction into the 8th Annual Maine Women's Hall of Fame. These women are being recognized for their outstanding contribution to improving opportunities for Maine women. It is an honor in itself to be nominated for this award, and we have 3 ladies who were nominated who met some of the criteria but not all of the ones for the Hall of Fame. And first of all, Shirley Richard of Madison, and I would either like to ask her or the person, one of the ones who nominated her, to come forward from the Women's Legislative Council of Maine and the Maine Association of Parliamentarians. She has her BS from Husson College, and Master in Education from the University of Maine at Orono, Honorary Doctor of Education from Husson College, served as President of the Maine Federation of Women's Clubs, and is currently the President of the Women's Legislative Council of Maine. And she was a high school teacher for 30 years and is now a member of the Maine House of Representatives. Is she here or someone here to receive the certificate for her? Okay, it will be mailed to her. Gladys Jarrett of Cape Elizabeth, who was nominated by the League of Women Voters of Maine and the Portland YWCA. She graduated from St. Lawrence University in Appleton, Wisconsin. She trained at Hull House in Chicago, worked for the YWCA in Connecticut, and later in New Jersey. She was hired in 1943 and served as executive director of the Portland YWCA for 25 years until her retirement in 1968. She developed a wide range of women's sports, fitness, and recreation activities, a ladies' day out, a summer camp for girls. She has been an active member of the League of Women Voters since 1944, and at 91 she serves as a role model and mentor to the current executive director of the Portland YWCA. Is there someone here to accept the award for her? Okay, it will be mailed to her. The late Florence Daly of Augusta, who was nominated by the Augusta Business and Professional Women, was graduated from Cornell University in 1924, one of only a few women to be there at the time. She lived alone and worked in New York City, then moving to New Rochelle and later to Augusta, Maine. At age 80, she opened her own art gallery in Augusta, where she sold her watercolors to brighten up the lives of family and friends. Her work ethic, her dedication to community organization, and the impact of her art set a worthy example for others to follow. Is there anyone here to accept it for her? As noted in the program today, the Maine Women's Hall of Fame is dedicated to women who have made an outstanding contribution to improving opportunities for all Maine women. This induction ceremony is in observance of Women's History Month. We now will have the presentation part of the program. If you will look at your program, we will be having first a presentation for Billie Gammon. We'll be having 3 members from the Livermore Falls BPW, Hilda Corcom, Pauline Gagnon, Lolita Hardy, Ronald Clay from the Farm Museum Research Association, and Harry Hart Fowler, great-grandson of, I'm not sure if I pronounced it right, Elihu Washburn. And representatives from the Gammon family will be Nancy Wakefield, Darcy Wakefield, and Betsy Wakefield. And for the presentation for Brownie Schrumpf, we will have the President Frederick Hutchinson from the University of Maine, the Honorable John E. Baldacci, Congress of the United States, Joni Averill from the Bangor Daily News, who will be representing publisher Richard J. Warren, Catherine Musgrave, nutritionist, Priscilla Dodge, retired librarian, and Dana DeVoe, attorney for Brownie. And we'll just keep the program running smoothly, and to save time, we'll just ask each of the people to come up and do their part of the presentation. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm very happy to be here today and see Billie Gammon become a member of the Women's Hall of Fame. She has been a very innovative woman, and she has worked long, hard hours. And back in the 50s, she had a vision, many visions of what they could do with this, what we used to call phenol. And then she lived to see it all materialize. And I want to thank all of you who helped so we could, with all your letters that you sent to me, and we have them here over here in the book. And we also want to thank all those who helped make copies of any releases of the paper. And we hope the best for Billie.
Hello, I'm Pauline Gagnon, President of the Livermore Falls Business and Professional Women's Club. We are pleased to sponsor Billie Gammon as a candidate to the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. We are very happy that she is one of the winners. At this time, I'd like to thank Billie's family and BPW member Hilda Corcom for all their hard work that made this possible. Thank you.
I'm Lolita Hardy, past president of the Livermore Falls BPW. Welcome to and welcome to this Silver Valley. We are so happy to be here today. It's just something special for us to be here to induct Billie into the State of Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I've been fortunate to live near the New Orleans. And so through the years, I have really noticed how it has improved, and it has improved under Billie's dedication to the Washburn Island. Close to me are 2 people that went to live in at the New Orleans. One is my daughter, and one is my grandson. And out of the hundreds of women and families that have been there, I think it's quite an honor that I've had 2 that have been. And I know that my daughter has carried on the many things that she learned. And my grandson certainly remembers some of the things he learned there. Thank you.
I was concerned when I first learned that Billie had been nominated for the Maine Women's Hall of Fame because I didn't know that much about the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. I recall visiting some halls of fame in the past where one of the qualifications for getting in was that you had to be dead. And I remember a story that was told by a good friend of mine from Texas who raises racing greyhounds and provides retirement homes for them when their racing days are over. He loves his dogs, and and one time he made a pilgrimage to the American Greyhound Hall of Fame and was absolutely stricken when he came in the front door and realized that many of their inductees are stuffed and mounted. Most relieved to learn that this organization had nothing to do with requiring Billie to be either dead or stuffed and mounted. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here today and to say a few kind words about a person who deserves all of them and many more, Billie Gammon. There are many chapters to the story of Billie Gammon, and I can't claim to know all of them, but some of her family members will have more to say about it. I do know that Billie was born and raised at a time when a woman's horizons were a good deal more limited than they are today. She came into a world where a woman might aspire to achievement and to excellence. Was expected to limit those aspirations to certain traditional and accepted roles, typically those of homemaker, wife, and mother, or less typically, those of nurse, teacher, secretary, librarian, or perhaps telephone operator. For her first half-century or so, Billie more or less followed that well-worn and time-tested feminine pathway. She became a wife, a homemaker, a mother, and then a grandmother. She also worked for a time as a teacher, was active in church and community organizations, and then took on a part-time job as a librarian during the summer of 1954 at an odd sort of place not too far from where she lived in Livermore Falls. That odd sort of place was a Gothic church-like structure of Maine granite, complete with stained glass windows, which stood incongruously in a cow pasture, near what had once been the home of a rather extraordinary family, the Washburns. The Washburns had called their home the Norlands, and that name lives on today in the hearts and minds of tens of thousands of people here in Maine and elsewhere, thanks very largely to Billie Gammon. But I'm getting ahead of myself. When Billie began working at the Norlands Library in 1954, it was just a job, and not a terribly demanding one at that. Visitors were not exactly beating a pathway to the library at Norlands. And that gave Billie ample opportunity to explore the books and the family pictures of the Washburns there on the library shelves, to read, to think, to learn about the history of the place and its inhabitants, and to dream just a bit. Norlands slept while Billie dreamed. The basis of the heirs, rather, of the Washburn family, which were scattered from Maine to the farthest ends of the earth, had an affection for their ancestral home, but they made little use of it. Meanwhile, maintenance costs were mounting with every passing year, and by the early 70s, the family was ready to think about disposition of the Norlands. At that time, Norlands might very well have been subdivided into building lots for tract housing. But instead, it was time for Billie Gammon's dreams to start coming true. Her idea was presented to the Washburn family members. Turn the property over to a nonprofit foundation that would maintain Norlands and operate it as an educational resource. Turn it into a place where people would come to learn about history, the specific history of the Washburns, the broader history of American farm life that had shaped the Washburns' early years, and the history of 19th century state and national politics, international diplomacy, military affairs, and business enterprises in which the Washburns had eventually become involved. If my memory serves me, I believe that there were a total of 136 Washburn heirs who signed away their property rights to the Norlands, giving a thumbs up to Billie's dream and a thumbs down to alternatives that might have been far more profitable for them. Less than a year later, busloads of school children had begun beating paths to Norlands, and today there are tens of thousands of visitors who come there every year. A lot of people took great satisfaction in the transformation of Norlands into a source of community pride and educational resource for Maine schools. But Billie wasn't resting on those laurels. She was doing some more dreaming. She dreamed that New Orleans visitors wouldn't just hear about history or see displays of historical collections. They would learn history with all of their five senses. Indeed, they would live history by coming to New Orleans for as much as several days at a time, leaving their 20th century selves behind, taking on the identity of persons who had actually lived more than a century ago in the crossroads community where New Orleans now stands, and reliving the daily activities of another time. That dream has also come true. New Orleans has become a classroom for teachers, seeking to practice living history techniques and adapt them for use in their schools. It's become a training ground for museum professionals, seeking to breathe life into static displays. It's become a place where staff members from much larger, better endowed, and better known historic sites come to hone their interpretive skills in a period setting that is authentic rather than recreated, and at a pace that provides opportunity for creative reflection. New Orleans has become a seedbed for ideas and initiatives that have now been transplanted to other locations and taken root there. Indeed, what Billie once described as Maine's best-kept secret has become a prominent beacon that guides and beckons a national and even international community of historical interpreters. The New Orleans Living History Center has also become an experimental laboratory in which Billie herself, through her 19th century alter ego, Mercy Lovejoy, has pioneered the interpretation of individuals and groups long ignored by many historians: the aged, the infirm, the indigent, and women. It's no overstatement to say that each of the programs at New Orleans has been conceived, refined, and brought to fruition largely through the personal vision and effort of Billie Gammon, and through her incomparable skill at coaxing dollars, goods, and services out of a cadre of supporters ranging from next-door neighbors to local businesses, multinational corporations, and agencies of state and federal government. The success of the Living History Live-In programs might well have been the crowning achievement of Billie's professional life, if she hadn't started dreaming again. This time, she went over the edge and concocted the outlandish notion that academic scholars from all over the country could be persuaded to come to New Orleans on a back road in Livermore Falls, at their own expense no less, and to spend 2 or 3 days freely sharing the results of their ongoing research into 19th century history with one another and with the public at large. Almost anyone could have predicted that this idea would not get very far. Some of those who made that prediction may be among the audience or among the presenters at this year's 4th annual conference sponsored by the Washburn Humanities Center. Another one of Billie's dreams come true. Yes, she dreams rather well, but it would be terribly misleading to characterize her as a dreamer. She's much more of a doer, who managed the New Orleans day-to-day programs and support operations as an unpaid director for 2 decades. She's also an accomplished get-to-doer with an incredible knack for coaxing others to give of their time, talent, and resources. She put the squeeze on me 25 years ago, and I haven't gotten away yet. There can be no doubt that New Orleans is a very special place by virtue of its own history and that of the Washburn family, but much of its extraordinary potential would never have been realized had it not been for the dedication, perseverance, and skills of an equally extraordinary person. This one. Thanks to her, Maine possesses a world-class educational resource whose benefits not only derive to Maine people, but far beyond the boundaries of our state. Age has finally slowed Billie to the point where she can no longer work 26-hour days, and to the point where some others, some of the time, can almost keep up with her. Still, she sets a standard that few can hope to equal as an example of long-term commitment, hands-on involvement, far-reaching creativity, and nearly boundless energy. It's perhaps a good thing that the first half of Billie's life was lived at a time when a woman's opportunities were more circumscribed than they are today? Had she been raised from childhood with the notion that her achievements would be limited only by her own abilities and visions? Had she started dreaming and followed her dreams a few decades sooner, she would probably have gone on to the State House, the White House, or the moon, rather than to that odd little Gothic library in the cow pasture. And the woods and fields of New Orleans might very well be dotted today with what a songwriter once referred to as little boxes made of ticky-tacky. Because of Billie's efforts and her dreams, an important piece of Maine's past has been saved as a resource for the present and as a legacy for the future. For this, and for her dedication to the roles of wife, homemaker, mother, grandmother, church and community volunteer, teacher, and librarian, she richly deserves the honor of induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame.
My name is Harry Fowler, and as a great-grandson of Billie Hugh Washburn, I've been asked to say a few words regarding Billie Gammon's dedicated efforts on behalf of New Orleans, the Washburn homestead in Livermore. I don't know how many of you have been there. I hope that most of you have. I had a few pictures blown up of the place. I don't know if you can see that or not, but I'm hoping that if you see it, maybe I can persuade you to get up there and take a look at it. You know the person to see who will show you around. This is the little Gothic library that Ron Clay so elegantly described, where Billie labored mightily. And this is our church, which is used for seminars, for conferences, and as a general meeting hall. It was my understanding that the Hall of Fame sponsors, I feel a little foolish being here because Ron Clay does such a great job that he's a terrible person to have to follow. It was my understanding that the Hall of Fame sponsors felt that it would be instructive for a Washburn descendant to share with you his feelings about the way New Orleans has developed over the period of Billie's stewardship in the transition from a privately held situation to a living museum serving under the guidance of the Maine Historic Preservation Commission. 20 years before being named as director, as Ron had mentioned, Billie Gammon had originally come to New Orleans in 1954 at the request of one of the descendants to help organize the numerous family documents, papers, and memorabilia which were stored in the library. The library is a replica of the one in Hallowell. You may be familiar with that one. And it had been designed to accommodate 7 sections, one for each of the Washburn brothers, who had had it built in 1883. There was very little order to the whole collection beyond the story of each brother's contribution in various cardboard boxes, manila folders, and other creative containers, each in its own designated section. Billie Gammon proved more than equal to the task, and in the process, as she expressed it, fell under the spell of the past. I was absolutely fascinated in talking with her one day, how she described to me that in transcribing the journals containing letters written among and between the various brothers, she had become so adept at recognizing the individual handwriting of each of the brothers that in those cases where one had not signed his letter, she still knew from whom it had come, which is pretty good because I can't read my own writing. She had become so immersed in the history of the Washburn family that she also felt it would be most worthwhile if New Orleans could be shared with a much larger community, which Ron Clay has gone into much further detail on. Through her efforts, she had first started having public visits to the library in various groups and ever-increasing numbers each year. My last visit to New Orleans, before I was turned over to the foundation, was over the Labor Day weekend of 1971. I had come up with my family and I wanted to stay in the house just one more time before I was told I could never set foot in the bedroom again. I can visit the bedroom, but I can't sleep. At that time, the poor place was literally falling down around our ears. It was a classic case of genteel poverty. The carpets were all worn, the upholstered pieces of furniture were coming apart, the paint was peeling off the ceilings, there were water stains on the walls. and an exterior in bad need of a good coat of paint. Actually, it was a perfect setting for a good gothic horror story. When I came back in 1990, almost 20 years later, it was not just because of personal interest. It was on behalf of my aunt, who was no longer a trustee after many, many years, and was too old at the age of 92 to make the journey from Cape Cod. She had always continued a deep abiding interest in her ancestral home and wanted a first-hand report. I was completely electrified by what I saw, and so was she when I returned with pictures of all the activity going on. I had come up from one of the seminar programs conducted by the Humanities Center. There were not only scores of people involved in the seminar, there were 3 large yellow school buses whose numerous young passengers were caught up in tours and visits to the schoolhouse and to the barn, as well as to the surrounding area by our horse-drawn wagon. And there were group tours by interns dressed in costumes of the mid-1800s, visiting the 3 principal buildings on the property. These are the ones I just showed you. What I was witnessing was the transformation of an underused, family-held homestead into a vibrant living museum, well on its way to being restored to its former glory. And the principal guiding force behind it all was Billie Gammon. Her skill at obtaining cultural grants had made possible the extensive renovations needed in the restoration of all the principal elements of the property. In addition, the live-in program, the intern program, the outreach program, the college student programs, and the well-attended university-conducted seminars all bear her stamp. I am certain that there is not a Washburn descendant who is not deeply grateful to those dedicated others who have made it possible, and especially grateful to Billie Gammon. Thank you.
This is a great day, and I'm very proud to be here. I'm Billie's daughter. I'm very proud of my mother and all she has accomplished. Her hard work, her dedication, and especially her commitment made her dreams come true. It changed New Orleans from a rundown set of buildings hidden behind a hedge to a fantastic living history center. She certainly has set an example for women and for men too. I'm very proud of my mother and very, very happy to be with her today as she earns her place in the Maine Women's Hall. Thank you.
And this is something I wrote for her. For my grandmother, when I look at you, my fears about aging crumble under your black SAS sneakers with the special inserts. And I remember that round bales of hay are meant for rolling, that chocolate is a food group, that stairs are for climbing, that all it takes is a little stale beer to kill slugs, that no is not a definitive answer, but encouragement to try harder. And I know that in 53 years, I want to be you, and I want you there to remind me how you do it. How you mix the yeast and the sugar and the lukewarm water for French bread, add the flour and a pinch of salt as you raise 2 kids, tend your husband's sick or old relatives, and volunteer in your church and community. And as your children leave home, you have a back operation and return to college. How you knead the dough gently until smooth and elastic, and while the bread rises, you start a museum, answer the museum phone, write a grant, put that bread into space, get an award from the White House, do an interview with the Wall Street Journal about outhouses, and consult on a documentary. How you cut a piece of fresh bread, top it with margarine, and design and build your new garage, and plan the Maple Days Festival at the museum. And how, when the bread is almost gone and the day is almost over, you turn off the front door light, turn down the heat, and go to bed. And in bed, you write one last thank you to the festival volunteers and decide what you'll face tomorrow in the Maine tourism hearing, and do your crossword puzzle, and it will be 2 a.m. when you turn out the light, wind your alarm clock, and lower the heat of your electric blanket only to be woken up by your phone 6 hours later. Well, in theory, I want to be you. You woman, you 80-year-old woman with more energy than 27-year-old me.
You poetry-quoting, white-haired grandmother of four, museum director, grant writer, baker, public speaking. I have to be at the New Orleans 10 minutes ago, woman. But in reality, even the thought of it tires me out.
Hi, my name is Betsy. My grandmother calls me Bootsy, but nobody else is allowed to do that. Today I'm really just Billie's granddaughter, and that's something I go by quite a bit. My grandmother's sort of like my calling card. I pull her out when I really need her. I'm not the best student. Sometimes I pass in papers a little late, and I've come to find out that if I time it just right and let the history professor know who she is and how I'm related to her, I can get my way. So, a lot of people have told you today about her influence on history, but to me, she's just an amazing woman. When I think of my grandmother, I think of fun. She gets this twinkle in her eye, and she starts just rolling. She's really inspired both me and both my sister to do anything we want to do, and that's what's so amazing about her. When I wrote my nomination request for my grandmother, I really challenged this organization. I told them not to forget what she's done, and I'm really glad to see that they took that challenge. Thank you.
I'm Billie's son, Michael, in case you can't tell. About 3.5 years ago, my mother started having some heart problems, and I became her in-house nurse and chief chauffeur. And it was, as bad as it was at the time, it was actually a blessing in disguise because, you know, I got totally reacquainted with my mother and spent a lot of time with her. And I'll have, you know, she had an operation 2 years ago, and since then it's just been 110%. But I have to correct Ron Clay. Her normal days up until a year or so ago were 16 to 18 hours. And now I've been keeping track, and they're somewhere between 12 and 14. And Darcy's right. I mean, she might go to bed at midnight, but the light's on until 2 a.m. And I mean, that's no exaggeration. But my mother does really play the Nolan's role pretty well. She's never had a driver's license. She's never owned a microwave. She's never owned a TV. We do have running water, and we do have a but there's no computer. And much to her dismay, lately she's been starting to receive some faxes at the local drugstore. And she's actually discovered priority mail and express mail. So she's really starting to come around. And by the year 2000, who knows what she'll have. But I don't think she's ever typed. I mean, I've never seen a typewriter in her home. But the Livermore Falls post office informs me, and I know because any day that I'm at her house, I lug out the mail. And I'm not exaggerating when I tell you the handwritten mail daily is about 4 inches. But they tell me that she is by far their best customer. And you know, Ron mentioned about, you know, he doesn't know what else Billie's got up her sleeve for the future, but having spent a lot of time with my mother, she's the best person in the world to take on a road trip. There's never a dull minute with her riding shotgun. She's tremendous, and the mind never shuts off. But believe me, in the year 1998 and beyond, you'll see more dreams, and you'll see more of those dreams become reality. And I'm very proud to be her son, and she's had a big influence on me. And I think one of the things that stands out the most is that this woman loves her work, and I think that shows. And what's been tremendous is she's given all this time and dedication to New Orleans, in the church and different things, but she's still the world's best mother, and I'm very proud of you. I was sorry today when I arrived to learn that Brownie would not be here, but I was delighted to learn that one of her relatives is. And also, I felt better when I stopped and thinking I couldn't believe there would be very many of you that didn't sometime or other meet Brownie Schrumpf, because she was so present all over the state of Maine. University of Maine has had 11 presidents since Brownie Schrumpf arrived in Orem. An eager and talented home economics major from Reedfield Depot in 1921. But there's only been one Brownie, and I feel confident in saying there'll never be another like him. The University of Maine, community of Orono, indeed the whole state of Maine are better places because of Brownie's wonderful, infectious spirit and her devotion to the ideal of community involvement. At the University of Maine, we talk a lot about our three-part mission, which calls on the university to be the state's center of learning, discovery, and of public service. I can think of very few people who exemplify the public service part of UMaine's mission any better than Brownie has for all these many years. From her work as a young University of Maine graduate of Maine's 4-H clubs, through years of service to her church, to participation in the efforts of dozens of community organizations, Brownie has dedicated herself to making life better for those around her. To me, that's what public service is all about. Her friend Alice Dibben told a story that demonstrates Brownie's spirit. As Brownie's 90th birthday party was winding down late one afternoon a few years ago, most of the guests were tired and ready to call it a day. Not many were surprised, however, to hear Brownie say that she was headed to Bangor to work on the cerebral palsy telephone. That was Brownie. It is truly amazing to note that Brownie wrote her cooking column for the Bangor Daily News for more than 40 years, using a manual typewriter that she bought from the student newspaper. By taking her basic skill, her knowledge learned in the classroom, and through other experiences, and presenting it at all in an entertaining way, she shared the gift of good food with thousands and thousands of people. And that gift goes on, well beyond Eastern Maine, through her two books. Imagine the pleasure this woman has brought to women, to people, by sharing what she knows. Brownie's contributions to the University of Maine are too numerous to mention here today. Her tireless work for the university, through its alumni association, has helped to keep UMaine in the hearts and minds of people quite literally all over the world. She is the deserving recipient of two of our most prestigious alumni honors, the Black Bear Award, which she received in 1957, and the Pine Tree Alumni Service Emblem, awarded to her in 1974. All of the accolades and honors that have been constant in this rich, full life, including the wonderful one she receives today, are deserved and are appropriate. But one thing that makes Brownie special to me is this. She would have done everything exactly the same way, even without the recognition. She's done it all because she really, truly cares.
You know, I can't do one of these things without talking about my mother. I feel like I have to. God, I got to tell you, I was so pleased and proud to be here to listen to your family talk about you and your contributions, and members of the community talk about you, Billie, and I just want to congratulate you. I know that John Wakefield, I worked in the Maine Senate for 12 years, and John was here, and I said to John, he said, geez, I'm here today, and I was talking to my mother-in-law and everything else, and you're going to be here. And I said to him, I said, now, would you rather be here listening to me or working on the state budget? And he said, it was a tough call either way, he said. But a business and professional women's group, the University of Maine at Augusta, Gammon's family, Miss LaValle, it's a pleasure and honor to be here. I want to thank the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. as a son of a mother who raised 8 children and a brother of 2 sisters who, in their own right, are trying to further the cause for Maine women and women in general, I want to congratulate Maine Women's Hall of Fame for its foundation, its inductees, and those that have gone on before. I'm honored to be able to join you today. As someone who grew up in the food business in the Bangor area, Brownie Schrumpf is a local legend. Those of you who are familiar with Brownie and her lifetime achievements know that she has a resume longer than the ingredients to minestrone soup. She's demonstrated to Maine women how to use their independent thought and judgment to better themselves and their family for many, many years. She graduated from the Winthrop High School in 1921, and she went to the University of Maine, where she earned a degree in home economics 4 years later. Reviewing her life history, I am struck by her dedication to public service. Her first job was working with the 4-H program, and her position was a cooking instructor at the University of Maine, where she taught my father, by the way, how to be able to make that special sauce. Brownie's life has encompassed and accomplished more than most of us ever dreamed. She has a deep commitment to the lives of Maine women. Now, most of you know Brownie through her cookbooks, her cooking column in the Bangor Daily News, and her television show. Although she certainly loved to cook, her public service also extended to her church, local schools, the United Cerebral Palsy that you heard President Hutchinson talk about before, and her beloved University of Maine Foundation. Only recently did the ravages of age catch up with Brownie and force her to slow down a little. After nearly a century of looking after others, she certainly does deserve any rest that she can get. As many of you know, until just a few years ago, Brownie was seen around Bangor driving friends all over town. The fact that she was older than them never really mattered much. She just knew that others needed help. As a matter of fact, she was driving the car long before women were expected to, and it was a feat that she was able to accomplish, and again establishing an example to all of those, women and others alike, what you could do. Unfortunately, ill health has prevented Brownie from being with us today, and although some of the relatives are able to join us, on behalf of Brownie, I accept this award, and I join you in honoring a woman who had all the ingredients for a full life. To borrow from one of the titles of her books, Brownie Schrumpf is the true flavor of Maine. Thank you, Brownie, for your boundless energy, your gentle hand that helped others in need, and I'm going to present this. It says, to Brownie Schrumpf, we may live without poetry, music, and art. We may live without conscience and live without heart. We may live without friends, we may live without books, but the civilized man cannot live without cooks.
Good afternoon. My name is Joni Averill. I'm from the Bangor Daily News, and I did bring a couple of show and tells. I want you to know that the Bangor Daily News, we are still faithful users of Brownie's books. In fact, you'll see how dirty this one is. It's because so many people called so many times and still ask us for the recipes, and that's what I wanted you to know. She is still with us. Mrs. Gammon, congratulations. And I would just like to tell you that I have not been in Livermore Hall since June 9th, 1941. That's the day I was born. My father was beginning to practice nearby Buckingham. But now that I have heard what you have done with the place of my birth, I can promise you I will be there. I am here today representing our publisher, Richard J. Warren, who is with his wife Beth and his daughter Ann, doing exactly what Brownie and everyone associated with educating young people in Maine would appreciate their family doing today. They are taking Ann around campuses to see where she will be spending the next 4 years of her life. And we know that Brownie would be very happy that Rick and Beth are with their daughter today. And that's why I'm happy to represent him. I will read a brief statement from Mr. Warren, and then I have prepared one of my own at his request. The Bangor Daily News is proud and honored to have had Brownie Schrumpf grace our pages with her wit, wisdom, and world of recipes for more than 4 decades. It was our pleasure to be able to bring her weekly column of recipes, which she humbly considered, quote, good plain cookin', to our readers who took Brownie into their hearts and homes and have kept her there. Brownie's weekly visits to the news were always welcome, not just by the reporters and editors with whom she worked and visited over the years, but by 3 generations of the Warren family as well. We all eagerly looked forward to holidays when Brownie would bring in samples of her holiday cooking to share with us. It was the lucky ones who first saw her coming through the door because they got all the soft, creamy caramels. Bangor Publishing Company was privileged to publish her 2 cookbooks, The Flavor of Maine in 1976 and Memories from Brownie's Kitchen in 1989. It is not unusual, even now, as I have just shown you, for subscribers to call and request copies of those books. Today, Brownie Schrumpf joins an elite group of individuals whose impact on the health and well-being of Maine citizens is unparalleled. We congratulate our lifelong friend on her induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame and thank the Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women and the University of Maine, Augusta for according our columnist this honor. Very truly yours, Richard J. Warren, publisher. It is my pleasure to be here today, representing Bangor Daily News publisher Richard J. Warren, to honor Mildred Brownie Schrumpf as she is inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. We thank the committee for selecting our former food columnist to join the impressive list of honorees who preceded her. Although our publisher really did grow up with Brownie, I didn't come into contact with her until I came to the University of Maine in 1961. However, she has been part of my life, part of my own family's life, and of my Bangor Daily News family ever since. Brownie has always been a member of our community and nutritionist in the state.
I just congratulate you, Ms. Gammon. I think this is wonderful. And I would like to say to you that this has been a very special day for me because I am representing a group I love. I am getting to talk about my very special food preparation mentor. And I got to ride down through the snowstorm with my husband. In my experience at many dietetic, nutrition, and home economics conferences nationwide, I have seen many recognition ceremonies for contributions for each of those fields. Frequently, they were people who were highly specialized in one particular area, and they received their honors. But Brownie is different. Brownie has integrated, remarkably so, the science of food preparation, the science of nutrition, and she has added to that a rare gift of making that information
in her kitchen, and she is gently, firmly, lovingly instructing you. She's not talking to you. She is guiding you through a process that is guaranteed to succeed if you follow her directions. You see, she rarely begins her recipes with her food columns with, quote, 1 cup of sugar. She was more apt to begin them with a conversational comment, as in her famous gingerbread people recipe. And I quote, "With a few days of vacation before Christmas, the children in the family may like to mix, cut, and bake soft molasses cookies for their friends. This recipe is proven to be one that children can handle, with a little help from mother. Gingerbread people are fun to decorate, too." Or she started chicken recipes with chicken with dumplings is a good dish for the cold weather. If hamburgers get to be old hat, with the family dress up ground beef with a sauce spiced with oregano and Tabasco sauce. For pizza cups, it was, quote, "Winter vacation is a time when basketball tournaments will keep many students busy. Others may enjoy the time at home, cooking a favorite food or trying new ones." She always remembered the kids. And for American chop suey, there are probably more recipes for American chop suey than meatloaf. When I was a child, a neighbor taught me how to make her version. It was a new dish to our family of 8 people, more during haying season, and made ground beef go farther for so many eaters. Following a cookie baking direction, she might suggest, watch carefully as molasses mixture burns easily. Remove it once from the cookie sheet. These are soft cookies and do not hang well on a tree. A crisp cookie is best for that. Other shapes may be cut from the stove, stars, moon, Santa Claus, or animal. For another column with a cookie recipe, she wrote, "When baking cookies, put in 2 pans at once. When the cookies on the lower shelf brown, move the bottom pan up and replace with a fresh one.
That keeps 2 pans in the oven at all times. And then she said, store soft cookies with soft and crisp with crisp. A child of the 40s, I miss venison mincemeat. Brownie apparently does not. Venison mincemeat is a collection of goodies, and the result would be as good if the mincemeat was made of beef, she wrote. I might take exception to that one statement. But she said, this is a way to use some of the less tender parts of the venison. This recipe came from Augusta County and makes a fine product. These county women didn't fool around with small recipes, but made enough to last all winter. This cook suggests sealing the finished product in pint jars, as that was the amount she put in a pie. The secret of venison mincemeat is to cook it a long time and slowly in a heavy kettle. Some homemakers cook it in the oven in a roaster. I've always wondered why we eat turkey for Thanksgiving, then turn around and eat it again 1 month later for Christmas, and forget it for most of the rest of the year. Brownie has a substitute suggestion. Quote, not many meats are easy to cook as beef or pork roast, and they are wintertime meats. Cooking a roast or beef on Christmas is easy, since the meat needs little attention after it is put into the oven, which gives one time to enjoy the morning festivities with the family. Vegetables may be prepared early and be ready to cook as dinner draws near. Thinking of all the Christmas Eves my late husband and I spent putting together children's toys way into the wee hours of the morning, and then dragging myself out of bed at 3 a.m. to put the 20-plus pound turkey in the oven, I surely wish I had read that recipe for living a long, long time ago. It is Brownie Schrumpf's humanness that makes her a woman for all seasons in Maine. She is the one who said, I like a recipe where you can go anywhere in the state of Maine and go into a little market and find anything you need, the staples. Well, Brownie is the staples. She is our connection to the past, to the present, and to the future. As long as little kids love gingerbread people, Brownie Schrumpf will be part of our lives. Her recipe is the recipe, and she's not afraid to mix a little food with politics. Responding to comments about the popularity of convenience foods in this age of double parental employment and women's liberation, she interjected with a smile, I think they've been liberated for a long while and they just don't know it. She then went on to reiterate her belief in the 4 basic food groups, adding that convenience foods aren't always that much more time-consuming and frequently less expensive. And she's right. One small item I spotted in my research makes me even more proud to be honoring my colleague and my friend today. I discovered that she and I share the privilege of having been initiated as honorary members into Delta Kappa Gamma International Sorority for Women Educators. Congratulations, Brownie, on your induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. You are indeed one of the finest female role models in the Pine Tree State. Your Bangor Daily News family salutes you.
Hi, Joni. I wish I'd gone before you. You said all the things I wanted to say. I'm Catherine Musgrave, and I'm very pleased to be here today representing the home economists and the nutritionists in the state. And I do congratulate you, Ms. Gammon. I think this is wonderful. And I would like to say to you that this has been a very special day for me because I am representing a group I love. I am getting to talk about my very special food preparation mentor. And I got to ride down through the snowstorm with my husband. In my experience, at many dietetic, nutrition, and home economics conferences nationwide, I have seen many recognition ceremonies for contributions for each of those fields. Frequently, they were people who were highly specialized in one particular area as they received their honors. But Brownie is different. Brownie has integrated, remarkably so, the science of food preparation, the science of nutrition, and she has added to that a rare gift of making that information available to multitudes of people. I cannot count the times that I called Brownie during my first years of teaching at the university. When the course was family meal planning, we used Brownie's recipes. When I was teaching experimental foods, I frequently called Brownie late at night and said, Brownie, what will happen if we do this certain experiment this way? because I knew Brownie knew. She had done foods all different ways, and all I needed to know was to get her opinion. Then I could go into the classroom the next day and teach with a great deal of confidence. When I really needed Brownie was in '73, when the energy crisis made us go back to canning foods. Now, Brownie has information in her mind that none of us have, because she learned canning long before they had all the conveniences that we have today. But in the meantime, most of us had forgotten canning because we thought it was so easy to freeze and use all the energy we wanted. When we needed to know about canning, we all, in cooperative extension and at the university, went back to Brownie to get the very basic principles of how to preserve and keep food. Brownie talked about putting food back, and that was what we learned from her. Then the unique thing that Brownie did, I think, was that she could show people, as Joni has said very well. Brownie could tell you the little steps in between, and she demonstrated so beautifully. One of my favorite pictures is of Brownie lifting out heavy packages of food at the back of Merrill Hall as she was going to climb up to the second floor and demonstrate to a bunch of people. Whether it was at night, often she didn't come to teach her classes until 7 or 8 o'clock at night, but that was still early for Brownie. And she could demonstrate these little tricks that today it's almost impossible to write in a recipe book. The School of Human Development faculty at the university depended on Brownie for information about our alumni. Seldom did a week go by that I did not get a call from Brownie quoting some clipping that she had taken from some of the Maine papers about one of our former students. And our Omicron Nu, which is our honorary home economics sorority for recognizing high achievements, very much depended on Brownie. She was an active member as a student, was a charter member of our chapter, and then also helped us found the alumni chapter. Also, our students knew about the scholarship fund that was established in honor of Brownie. And I won't say much more about her writing of the newspaper articles, except I, too, was always marveling at the fact that she could have something for everybody in one article. She would have one recipe for something that required a great deal of skill and knowledge of food preparation principles. And then in that very same article, she'd always have a convenience food that just could go together in no time at all for the busy homemaker. And as Joni said, she often incorporated cost figures that helped homemakers to make their food budget go farther. She must have spent hours shopping and experimenting with mixes and new items to produce the food products that she could give us the instructions for in her book and in her recipes. But the marvel of it all was that Brownie found time to do all of those things about food, but she still did what home economics stands for. She nurtured people in all stages of life, whether it was making those gingerbread men for the youngsters, whether it was popcorn balls for a kindergarten class, or serving a wedding reception, or taking food to the elderly. She knew how to nurture with food without making it, right now I'm concerned because people are making food such a reward for things. And Brownie didn't make it a reward, she just made it a part of everyday life. Now I know we're at a women's recognition program, but I have to say Brownie didn't need women's equal opportunity. She didn't need any kind of affirmative action program. She was a queen in her own world. She made her place in her world by combining her caring disposition with the knowledge that she acquired in home economics and the continuing education that she participated in each week of her life. She gave credit to whomever she got her recipes from, but she excelled in teaching others. She's been a real role model for women in our home economics field. Now, Brownie was not just concerned about the stomach. One of my most vivid memories of Brownie is over at our Performing Arts Center. We older faculty so much enjoy those events. But at one of them, the music had been unusually loud and a little bit different pitch than we've been accustomed to. And so during the intermission, I noted that most of our colleagues were silently slipping out, getting their coats very quietly and leaving. So I talked with Stan about whether or not we might just as well go home too. And we were sitting there debating it when I looked over the crowd, and the only other gray hair I saw in that whole Performing Arts Center was Brownie, and she was jiving right along with that young crowd and just having a ball. So I really do love Brownie as a food preparation person, as a scientist in many principles, and as a real true friend.
Gammons and a member of the Gammons family and friends of Mrs. Gammons, and Mrs. Dow and Brownie's nephews and friends of Brownie and friends of Mrs. Gammons. It's an honor for me to be here today. I've been Brownie's attorney almost since I opened my office in 1959 in Bangor. Brownie grew up on a farm in Reedfield Depot, and in reading an interview that she had given at the Page Farm and Home Museum several years ago, I learned that she became very interested in canning. And as a teenager on the farm in Reedfield, she got to be so good in canning that she became the Kennebec County champion in 4-H competition. That's significant because that gave her a chance to go to a statewide competition at the University of Maine. And that meant she had a chance for her first train ride. On the train, Augusta, changed trains in Waterville, got off in Orono, walked up to the campus from the Orono-Webster Side Station. When she got back, she was so excited that she said to her father, "I'd like to go up to Maine." And her father said, "Well, we'll see." And Brownie said, when he said that, I knew I was all set. President Fred and Congressman Baldacci have referred to Brownie's work in 4-H and for the County Extension Service. Joni Averill certainly has spoken eloquently, and Catherine Musgrave has spoken eloquently about the work that Brownie engaged in her over 40 years of writing food column for the Bangor Daily News. 2 cookbooks, hundreds and hundreds of columns, each a gem. Each column was a gem. And as Joni said so kindly, not only was there good cooking spelled out in the columns, but there were some wonderful comments about life and living that meant a lot to the people who read those columns. My first contact really with Brownie was about a year after I had opened my office. She was in charge of the program at Farm and Home Week. It's a phrase we don't hear much about now. But Farm and Home Week was a week at the University of Maine during spring break when people were able to come to the university, participate in programs, and they needed a speaker to speak for a half hour on wills. So she said, "Dana, can you come up?" I said, "I'd be glad to." So it wasn't long after that that Brownie and Bill called me and said, "Can you come over to our house and help us with the will?" Brownie's been very kind to my wife and to me over the years and has been very interested in our 6 children, how they were doing in high school, how they were doing in college, and what they were doing after they got out of college. Nothing that I can say, nothing really that any of the speakers before me have said today can in any way begin to speak adequately of the impact that Brownie has had on so many people in the state of Maine. It will be an honor for me tomorrow afternoon when I present this award to Brownie at the Honor Nursing Home. And I will speak to her and hope that she can understand me. And I tell her the friends that she had here today. Thank you.
I'm not a cook, and I'm a retired librarian for Priscilla Dodge. I don't believe I can say anything more. These fine speakers that have come before me have said it all and have described Brownie as I knew her and as you people knew her. I believe that they have illustrated what I have called Brownie's ripple effect that she has had right across the state of Maine and into New England, because she worked at the New England Exposition for many years and presented Maine foods and Maine agricultural foods in the Maine way, and across the entire nation. Because you know, and I know, everywhere a Maine daughter or son went, there would appear, probably like magic, in the kitchen, a book called The Flavor of Maine, or Memories from Brownie's Kitchen. The above books, to me, presented, and to my mother, who was a home economist too, it was good cooking. It was down east cooking. It was cooking the way food should be handled here in the state of Maine. And I grew up hearing Mother on the telephone when she had a problem. It was Brownie Schrumpf on the other end that would straighten things out for her. I can only say that her cookbook presented down east cooking at its best. And Mildred Brown Schrumpf has done so many things and written those books that I can only give her this as a tribute. Mildred Brown Schrumpf, more commonly known as Brownie, loved the world of nutrition. She spent her entire joyful life as teacher, author, judge, and cook. Her cuisine always playing state of Maine foods. The title of her first book, The Flavor of Maine. Mildred Brownie Schrumpf. At age 94, her life comes to fruition. Forever remembered, it seems, by the women of Maine, because she committed the golden rule to memory and then committed it to life. Her motto, do, don't grieve. And she did.
I want to thank all of you for the presentations, first of all for Billie Gammon and for Brownie Schrumpf. I'm sure that after everyone in the audience and everyone else up front heard about the other person, they understand why both of them were selected to be inducted in this 8th Annual Hall of Fame. At this time, I would like to present the certificates, and we'll start first with the one for Billie. Would you stand, Billie? And I'll read you what it says. The Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women and University of Maine Augusta presents the 8th Annual Maine Women's Hall of Fame Award to Ethel and Billie Gammon, founder of Washburn Norland Women History Center, teaching and volunteering on March 22, 1997 at the University of Maine Augusta, signed by the President of the Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women, Joyce Fitzpatrick, and Thomas Cabot, Dean of Learning Resources and University Development, University of Maine Augusta.
We'd better get a few things straight. People have been saying things, a lot of them are a little off. I love people. I love women and I love girls, but I like boys and men better. He told me to come clean and tell the truth. All right. He was going to tell on me if I didn't confess. I want to start with a little saying that has meant a lot to me. Maybe you all know it. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why we call it the present. And I want to say that this day is a very special gift from all of you people to me. And you've given me a wonderful present, this business of being inducted into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. And I thank every one of you for coming and for what you have done and for your faith and belief in what I've tried to do with my life. I also
want to express my thanks to the Maine Federation of Business and Professional Women and to the University of Maine at Augusta for doing this. And I'm humbly grateful to the Livermore Falls Business and Professional Women for them honoring me in this way and nominating me. And I thank all of you who supported that nomination. And I've got to give a special appreciation word to Hilda Cockham. She's the one who put it all together. And I thank you, Hilda. It's really special for me to be here in Augusta today. You know, I'm only about a couple of miles from where I was born in 1916. Isn't that exciting? And here I am, a little bit over 80, and I'm right back at the beginning and ready to start all over again. I do want to mention something. It's my understanding from all I've listened to that the reason you people are honoring me is for the work I've done at New Orleans. But I want you to get one thing straight. No one person created New Orleans Living History Center, no matter what you've heard. It's not true. It took a great many, many people. My family, my friends, and scores of people that I didn't know at the time they appeared. They have kept coming and helping, and they've done all the things that needed to be done day after day after day around the clock. And it's still going on today. And in order to set the record straight in another thing, I want you to know how New Orleans really got started. Ron Clay was terribly mixed up. He's a good man, but he gets things mixed up. And I'm going to tell you a little quickly about this. It was, as he said, in 1954 that the Washburn family asked me to go up to New Orleans. They wanted me to open up the library, study their family history, tell it to anyone who happened by, and to them. And I did that. And it is true that the first year only 27 visitors came. I was up there all summer, and that's the only people I saw. And I read and I studied, and that's when I did the dreaming that they all talk about, you know, and that's the truth. I look over at that little schoolhouse, and it was just shrouded with bushes. You could scarcely see it. But in my mind's eye, I could see smoke coming up the chimney. I could see children lining up. They'd been playing, and they were lining up to go in the door. I could see a teacher in the doorway. I could hear her ring the handbell. And it was just as real as if it were happening. And then as the years passed, I'd look at the church. Its steeple had fallen to the ground. It was the saddest looking building you ever saw. The windows were broken, the foundation was sagging, it had not a scrap of paint on it. I'd look at it, and I saw that beautiful spire touching the sky again. And I could hear the church bell ringing. And everywhere I saw people. There were people sitting in rocking chairs on the veranda. There were children running all over the place. There were farmers in the fields working. There were people going in and out of the church. And these were the things I dreamed and dreamed about. But you know, much as I love men, I've got to tell you this. When I would tell these beautiful dreams to the men on the board of New Orleans trustees, you know what? They'd look at me as if I had my head screwed on backwards. They really did. But that didn't stop me. For 19 years, the dream grew and grew and grew. And then one day, something wonderful happened. In the mail, there was the newsletter from the Maine State Museum. It was called Musings. And in it was an article, and it said, Massachusetts has its old Sturbridge Village. New Hampshire has its Strawberry Bank. Surely there must be some place in the state of Maine for living history. Well, you know, I wrote a letter right back, and I said, Dear Musings, I know just the place, but I have no power, no authority to make this happen. The place is New Orleans. It's in Livermore, Maine. And then I described the beautiful landscape, all that beautiful land, the farm that could be. I talked about the buildings and how wonderful they were. I didn't tell how run down they were. And I told the whole dream of what New Orleans could be. And then the last sentence in my letter was, please try and get a little bit excited over this. And I signed my name. Wow, simple. I got a letter right back quickly. And it said something like this. To say that we were a little bit excited is the understatement of the year. I'll be right over next week. And it was signed by Ronald J. Clay. So he came. The snow was far deeper than the snow is now. It was a January day and bitterly cold. And I took him in all of those icy, cold, dilapidated, messy buildings. And he could see what I saw. And I'm going to tell you, that man sitting there bears a great distinction. He is the first man who ever listened to me. And he not only listened, he believed, he understood, he agreed. Oh, what a man.
He's turning blue, Billie.
And with his support, let me tell you, we were able to convince the trustees that the dream had merit. And you know, it was only about another year before we opened that little one-room schoolhouse to Maine school children who wanted to come. And you know, it was in October, and smoke did come out the chimney, and real flesh and blood children were running all over the place, and a real school teacher stood in the doorway, and she rang the bell for all to hear. It's been going on ever since. Thank you all very, very much.
Mildred, Brownie, Schrumpf, home economist, nutrition, columnist, student, author, book. On the 22nd day of March 1997 at the University of Augusta, signed by Joyce Fitzpatrick, BPWA President, and Thomas Gammon, Dean of Learning Resources, University Development, University of
Really, the love and affection shown here today by your family and friends is really something, and I have to say our family also is doing good to the labor, having been with Nolan, and I think that this won't take long. My wife said, do it slow, don't do it fast. And I said, perhaps they'd like to get out of there do refreshment. Well, this will not really take long. I have a person I want to introduce. But I do have to say, when Brownie who was my aunt, was about 5 years old, she became very ill, which quickly spread to my Uncle Bill, to my mother Helen, and to this aunt I'm going to introduce. The family doctor came, he checked them all over, and he said to my grandmother, he checked her first, this aunt, he said she's not going to make it. Being a very tiny infant, he said, put her in that basket up on the shelf over that kitchen wood stove and keep her warm. It gives me the greatest pleasure in the world to introduce, 90 years later, my Aunt Doris Brownie's sister. I'm glad you could make it, Dottie. On her behalf, Brownie, we accept this award for Mildred Schrumpf, lovingly known as Brownie, and we thank those responsible for bringing this honor about. As you've already heard from my
previous speakers, Brownie was born and raised in Reedfield Depot on the Brown family farm. Her life of cooking and sharing grew from farm life, where all their food was raised. From this, Brownie began her dedication to the use of native-grown Maine foods. Early in life, standing on a stool, she watched her mother cooking. As Brownie grew, she knew exactly what her lifetime occupation would be. When college time arrived, her world became that of home economics. Brownie was determined to teach Maine women the importance of good nutrition by preparation and preservation. Her help and patience was particularly noted by young student women. From her family, we are fully aware of all the fine things Brownie has accomplished. Brownie was and still is dedicated to her beloved University of Maine and to her church and friends. The kindnesses she has shown to the many will be remembered by all. Now, to those of you who obviously perhaps do not know her, I do wish to say that she is not the last member of the family living in Maine. My brother, also her nephew, is here, and my wife, Masha. His wife was unable to attend today, and of course my aunt you've already met. Plus she has a niece, Joanne Dow Scott in Tennessee, two sons, William and Bill and Neil, who are in Florida, and I wish they were here today. But we are proud of Brownie, and we gratefully accept her induction into the Maine Women's Hall of Fame. We thank all of you very, very much. And that friend from Winthrop that I spoke to about is here, because I've just been looking, and I see him right now.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Roland Valley, for accepting that on behalf of your aunt. If you'll refer to the back page of the program booklet, you can note some of the people who are helped for the induction ceremony today, and also the judges for the Hall of Fame committee. If you haven't signed the guest book, please sign it. We'd like to have a record of all the people that are here today. And I would also like to mention that two previous inductees are here. One of those you've already met, Eloise Vitelli, who represented UMA earlier in the program, and the other lady is Elizabeth Liz Crandall, one of last year's inductees. Liz, would you stand so we can recognize you? She said she was going to sit back and relax and enjoy it maybe a little more this year. Last year she said it was kind of a lot to partake in. Thank you for joining us. And I would like to thank the past state presidents who have provided the refreshments over there, and I'd like to ask all of you to join us to have a chance to chat a bit, have some light refreshments, see the other inductees in the Hall of Fame, and have a chance to visit a bit before you start on your way home. Hopefully the travel will be a little better than it was on your way down.